God says, this is my final warning. If you skip this, you will suffer great losses within the next 7 minutes. Do not take this as a joke. If you skip it, you will cry for the rest of your life. Open it quickly before it's too late. My beloved child, do not scroll away from these words, because what you are about to receive is not ordinary comfort but a rescue for your heart and a shield for your tomorrow, and if you ignore this tender call you may miss a turning point that I have prepared to protect you from silent pain and unseen sorrow. I am speaking with urgency because I love you deeply, and I desire to pull you away from paths that would lead to regret and heavy tears, so stay with me carefully and receive what I am placing into your spirit at this very moment. If you agree with this truth in your heart and feel my presence gently touching your soul, type Amen. My warning is not meant to frighten you but to awaken you, because there are decisions forming around you and thoughts rising within you that could open doors to loss, yet I am stepping in before harm reaches you so that your life can move toward healing instead of heartbreak. The next minutes are not about punishment but about protection, because when I say 7 minutes I am speaking about urgency, about a small window in which your attention can shift your direction and spare you from years of sorrow that would follow careless choices. If you believe that I am guiding you right now and trust that I see what you cannot see, type 1111. Within these first moments, I also ask gently that you like this video as a simple act of faith and agreement, because when you do this small action with sincerity you are declaring that you welcome my guidance and you are ready to listen instead of turning away from the help that is reaching toward you with compassion. This act does not change me, but it changes your posture and shows that your heart is open, and an open heart is the place where miracles begin to grow quietly and steadily. My final warning is not about sudden disaster falling from the sky, but about the slow losses that happen when you ignore my voice, when you choose fear instead of faith, when you hold on to anger instead of forgiveness, and when you trust temporary comfort more than my eternal wisdom. Great losses often begin with small neglect, with one skipped moment of listening, with one stubborn decision made without prayerful thought, and I do not want you to walk into that valley when I am standing here offering you a safer road. There are relationships around you that require gentleness, and there are opportunities in front of you that require courage, and if you rush forward without listening to my guidance you may wound hearts or close doors that were meant to bless your future. I am not threatening you with punishment, but I am revealing consequences that naturally follow when my loving instruction is ignored, because I created you with freedom yet I also planted wisdom within you to keep you from destroying what I have carefully built for you. When I say you will cry for the rest of your life, I am speaking about the deep regret that comes from knowing you sensed my whisper yet chose to dismiss it, because regret can echo loudly in quiet nights and it can weigh heavily on the soul when you realize you turned away from a divine rescue. I want to spare you from that ache, from that constant replay of what could have been different if you had paused and listened, and that is why my voice is urgent now, calling you to open your heart quickly before pride or distraction closes it again. The 7 minutes I speak of are symbolic of a short, sacred space where heaven leans close to earth, where your spirit is more attentive than usual, and where a small change in direction can prevent years of struggle that would otherwise follow a careless step. In these minutes, I am inviting you to release bitterness you have been carrying, to forgive someone who hurt you, to let go of a habit that quietly steals your peace, and to trust that obedience to my gentle nudges will guard you from hidden traps. You may feel pressure around you from people who do not understand your faith, from voices that tell you to act quickly without reflection, or from emotions that push you toward impulsive decisions, but my warning stands as a loving barrier to keep you from running toward harm while believing it is harmless. I see what you cannot see, I understand the consequences that are forming beyond your sight, and I am intervening not to control you but to protect you from wounds that would take years to heal. My beloved child, imagine a parent pulling a child back from stepping into a busy road, not because the parent wishes to restrict joy but because the parent sees danger approaching at a speed the child does not recognize. That is how I am speaking to you now, with urgency wrapped in love, with firmness shaped by compassion, because I would rather interrupt your moment than allow you to suffer a lifetime of pain that could have been prevented by simple obedience. The losses I warn about may not be only material things like money or possessions, but may involve peace, trust, relationships, and spiritual strength, which are far more precious and far more difficult to restore once deeply damaged. A careless word spoken in anger can shatter trust, a selfish decision can break a bond, and a refusal to forgive can poison your own heart, and I am stepping in before such seeds grow into sorrowful harvests that would make you weep in regret. You are not alone in this moment, and you are not being singled out for fear, but you are being singled out for love, because I choose to speak to those I cherish and to warn those whose future I desire to protect. I know your weaknesses, I know your struggles, and I know the temptations pressing against you, and my final warning is a shield held up in front of you so that arrows meant to wound you will fall harmlessly to the ground. A powerful 7-second morning ritual, once hidden in CIA files, is resurfacing, and people are already seeing fast financial breakthroughs. It takes only seconds, yet activates a dormant wealth center in the brain most people never access. Click the link in the description and comments now. Access it before it disappears. Open your heart quickly before it becomes hardened by distraction or doubt, because when you allow my truth to settle within you, clarity begins to replace confusion and peace begins to replace anxiety. In this sacred pause, you are being given a chance to correct your path, to soften your attitude, to seek reconciliation, and to realign your life with the gentle teachings of Jesus Christ, who always leads toward healing and never toward destruction. The tears I speak of are not tears I desire for you, but tears that follow stubbornness and pride when warnings are ignored and consequences unfold exactly as I try to prevent. I long for your joy, for your stability, for your growth in faith, and for your days to be filled with quiet confidence rather than restless regret, and that is why my voice carries urgency today instead of soft distance. Stay with me through these words and let them sink deeply into your spirit, because what seems like a simple reminder now may become the turning point that saves you from unseen losses later. My love is patient, but my guidance sometimes comes with strong clarity, and today I am choosing clarity so that you do not mistake silence for approval when your next choice stands before you. I am not withdrawing my love from you, nor am I threatening to abandon you, but I am asking you to respond while your heart is still tender and willing to listen. This is the moment to slow down, to breathe, to reflect, and to allow my spirit to correct what needs correction, because a small change now can prevent deep sorrow later. Hold tightly to the teachings of Jesus Christ, who walked in humility, forgave freely, and chose obedience even when it was difficult, because following his example will guard you from the very losses I am warning you about. Let your decisions be shaped by compassion rather than ego, by patience rather than haste, and by faith rather than fear, and you will find that the dangers I warned about fade away before they ever reach you. I am not counting minutes on a clock as humans do, but I am pointing to a spiritual moment in which your heart stands at a crossroads, and the direction you choose in this sensitive season will shape your peace or your sorrow in ways that will echo for years. There are patterns in your life that have been forming slowly, habits of thought and reaction that seem harmless on the surface, yet they are creating small cracks in the foundation of your joy, and I am stepping in before those cracks widen into fractures that feel impossible to repair. The great losses I warned you about are often born in quiet compromise, in moments when you silence your conscience because listening feels inconvenient, or when you push aside my gentle conviction because pride feels stronger than humility. You may think a single decision does not matter, yet repeated small decisions become a path, and a path walked long enough becomes a destiny, and I do not want your destiny shaped by impulses that will leave you grieving what you once had. I see how easily you can be influenced by frustration, by fear of missing out, by the desire to prove yourself, and I am urging you to pause before those emotions guide your next move. There is a tenderness in your spirit that I placed there from the beginning, a sensitivity to truth and goodness that has protected you many times before, yet lately you have felt tempted to harden that tenderness because the world around you seems harsh and demanding. If you allow your heart to become cold in order to survive, you may protect yourself for a moment, but you will lose the warmth that makes your life meaningful, and that is one of the losses I am warning you about. Do not trade compassion for temporary strength, and do not silence kindness in order to appear powerful, because true strength is rooted in love and guided by my wisdom. Type 1212 if you walk by faith. I see the tension you are carrying, the weight of responsibilities, the silent pressure to succeed, and the fear of disappointing others, and I understand how these burdens can make you rush forward without listening carefully. In such moments, my voice can seem like an interruption rather than a blessing, yet that interruption is often the very thing that saves you from stepping into regret. When I say this is my final warning, I am speaking about this particular season, this specific opportunity to change direction before certain consequences become harder to avoid. You may be standing on the edge of a conversation that could damage a relationship, or on the verge of a financial decision driven more by anxiety than by wisdom, or preparing to walk away from something simply because it feels difficult rather than truly harmful. I am asking you to bring that situation into the light of prayerful reflection instead of acting on impulse, because the next few moments of clarity can spare you years of rebuilding what did not have to be broken. My desire is not to control your choices but to illuminate the hidden outcomes that you cannot yet see. Remember the gentle way Jesus lived among people, choosing patience when insulted, choosing mercy when misunderstood, choosing obedience even when it led through hardship, and understand that his path was not weak but powerful in a quiet and enduring way. When you follow his example, you avoid the dramatic losses that come from reacting out of wounded pride or fear, and you build a life that remains steady even when storms rise around you. The world may celebrate quick victories and loud responses, but heaven values slow faithfulness and humble trust. I am also warning you about neglect, about the slow drifting away from prayer, from reflection, from the stillness where my guidance becomes clear, because spiritual dryness can lead to decisions made without discernment. When you stop nourishing your spirit, you begin to rely only on your own limited understanding, and that is when mistakes multiply quietly until they feel overwhelming. Stay rooted in faith, not out of obligation but out of love, and you will find that my direction becomes a lamp in moments when confusion tries to take over. A simple but powerful 7-second at-home ritual, it's hidden in CIA files for years, is now changing lives rapidly. Backed by neuroscience research, it can begin shifting your financial direction in just days. Click the link in the description and comments now and step into abundance today. The tears I described are not only tears of sudden tragedy but tears of gradual realization, the kind that come when you look back and see how many times you felt my gentle nudge yet chose distraction instead. Regret can be a heavy companion, whispering what might have been different if you had slowed down and listened, and I long to keep you from carrying that burden. That is why I speak firmly now, because prevention is far kinder than repair. You are precious to me beyond what you can measure, and every warning I give is wrapped in a deep desire to see you flourish, to see your relationship strengthened, your mind at peace, and your heart anchored in hope. I do not want you to suffer losses that could have been avoided through simple obedience and trust, and I do not want you to mistake temporary excitement for lasting blessing. There are choices that look attractive in the moment yet lead to emptiness later, and I am guiding you away from those illusions. Type yes to affirm. Let these words settle gently into your spirit rather than stir fear, because fear is not my goal, but awareness is, and awareness creates space for wisdom to grow. I am not predicting disaster with delight, but I am revealing potential consequences with compassion, because love speaks up before harm arrives. You are not being judged in this moment, but invited to realign your steps with truth and patience. If you have been holding on to resentment, release it before it hardens your heart and steals the joy from your days, because unforgiveness is a silent thief that takes far more than it promises to protect. If you have been tempted to compromise your integrity for quick gain, reconsider before you trade long-term peace for short-term applause, because integrity once broken can take years to rebuild. If you have been neglecting those who depend on your care, turn back toward them with tenderness before distance grows into separation that feels unbearable. I am giving you this sacred pause not to pressure you but to protect you, and within this pause you have the power to shift your path toward stability and grace. The next 7 minutes of spiritual attentiveness can redirect years of future experience, because small corrections now prevent painful corrections later. Listen carefully, respond humbly, and allow my guidance to shape your next steps with calm confidence. You are not destined for loss, but for growth, not for endless tears but for steady joy, and my warning is the bridge that carries you away from harm and toward healing. There are moments in life when everything appears stable on the surface, yet inside your heart small compromises are forming, small shifts away from truth and gentleness, and these shifts can slowly disconnect you from the peace that once anchored you firmly. I speak urgently because I see how easily distraction can pull you away from what truly matters, and how pride can convince you that you are strong enough to ignore guidance that was meant to preserve your joy. You have been carrying silent battles within your thoughts, replaying words spoken by others, imagining outcomes that have not yet happened, and allowing fear to write stories that feel real even when they are not rooted in truth. These internal battles drain your strength and cloud your judgment, and when your mind is clouded you may make decisions that create avoidable suffering. My warning is an invitation to clear your thoughts before they guide your actions in a direction that will cost you more than you realize. I see how temptation sometimes disguises itself as opportunity, presenting itself as something necessary or urgent, yet underneath it carries seeds of unrest and regret. Not every open door is meant to be entered, and not every emotional impulse deserves to be followed, because some paths that appear exciting at first end in emptiness that feels heavier than the struggle you tried to escape. I am guiding you to pause and examine what is stirring inside you before you step forward, because discernment is protection and patience is strength. There are also voices around you that may encourage haste, voices that value quick success over steady growth, and voices that measure worth by applause instead of character. If you follow these voices without filtering them through faith and wisdom, you may gain something temporary but lose something eternal, and that loss will weigh on your heart far more than any short-term gain could satisfy. I want you to measure your steps not by urgency created by others but by alignment with my peace, because true direction carries calm assurance rather than frantic pressure. Type 1919 to receive miracles. The miracle I desire for you is not only material blessing but clarity of heart and steadiness of spirit, because when your inner world is aligned with my truth, external circumstances lose their power to control your emotions. Many of the tears I warned about come from decisions made in confusion, from words spoken in anger, from promises broken because they were made without reflection, and I am reaching toward you before such moments solidify into regret. You are standing in a space where humility can redirect your future, where a simple surrender of pride can protect relationships that matter deeply to your heart. I also see the exhaustion you feel from trying to manage everything alone, from believing that if you do not act quickly you will fall behind or miss out on something important. This constant pressure to move faster than wisdom allows creates cracks in your spiritual foundation, and those cracks widen when you ignore the need for rest and reflection. My warning invites you to slow your breathing, to quiet your thoughts, and to remember that your value is not determined by how quickly you react but by how faithfully you respond. What if wealth was never about luck, but a hidden brain signal buried in CIA files? This frequency is opening doors, attracting opportunities, and changing lives quickly. Thousands are already using it to attract wealth like never before. Click the link in the description and comments now and activate the money-attracting brain wave today. When I speak about suffering losses within 7 minutes, I am drawing your attention to how quickly a single impulsive act can change the direction of your day, your relationship, or your integrity. A message sent in anger, a purchase made in fear, a decision driven by jealousy, or a harsh word spoken without patience can begin a chain of consequences that feel impossible to reverse once they unfold. I am not condemning you for past mistakes, but I am guarding you against repeating patterns that have already caused you pain before. The life of Jesus Christ teaches you that strength is found in restraint, that wisdom grows in silence, and that true victory often looks like gentle obedience rather than dramatic action. He walked through misunderstanding without retaliating, through temptation without surrendering, and through hardship without abandoning love, and this example remains your safest guide. When you choose to mirror that calm and faithful spirit, you close doors that would have led to regret and open pathways that carry lasting peace. There is also a subtle danger in believing that you have more time to correct your course later, because procrastination in spiritual matters can slowly harden your heart and make future obedience feel more difficult. The present moment is where transformation begins, and delay often strengthens the very habits you wish to overcome. I am urging you now because now is when your heart is listening, now is when awareness is fresh, and now is when change can happen with less struggle. Type 666 if you trust Jesus. Trust is not merely a feeling but a decision to lean into guidance even when your emotions pull in another direction, and that decision shields you from losses that fear would otherwise create. You may not see the full picture of what lies ahead, but I see the intersections of your choices and the consequences waiting at each turn, and my warning is born from that complete understanding. When you trust me fully, you release the burden of controlling outcomes and allow wisdom to shape your actions. Consider the relationships that matter most to you, and notice how easily tension can arise when communication is rushed or when assumptions replace patient listening. Many deep wounds begin with small misunderstandings that were never gently clarified, and those wounds can grow into distances that feel heartbreaking if left unattended. I am guiding you to approach your loved ones with softness rather than defensiveness, because gentleness preserves what anger would destroy. I am also reminding you that self-neglect can be a quiet form of loss, because when you ignore your need for spiritual nourishment and emotional healing, you slowly drain the strength that sustains your faith. Spend time in stillness, reflect on my love, and allow gratitude to replace comparison, because comparison steals joy and creates dissatisfaction that leads to poor decisions. The 7 minutes I speak of can be 7 minutes of intentional stillness that restore your perspective before you act. You are not being threatened but embraced, not being pushed away but drawn closer, and my firmness is simply the language of love that refuses to let you wander into avoidable sorrow. I would rather speak strongly now than watch you cry later over something that could have been prevented by attentive obedience. Your future contains beauty, growth, and peace, and I am committed to protecting those gifts by warning you when necessary. Stay anchored in hope, hold tightly to compassion, and let every choice pass through the filter of faith before it becomes action, because this is how you avoid the great losses I described and walk instead into steady blessing. My love for you has never wavered, and it never will, but my love also corrects and guides so that you may thrive rather than merely survive. When I say this is my final warning, I am speaking into a specific turning point in your spiritual journey, a moment where distraction or obedience will shape the next chapter of your story in ways that reach far beyond today. There are blessings assigned to your future that require maturity in the present, and if you move ahead without allowing your character to deepen, you may lose what you prayed so long to receive. Many people cry not because they were denied opportunity, but because they mishandled what they were given, and I desire to spare you from that sorrow. I am preparing you for something greater than you can currently imagine, yet preparation requires humility, patience, and careful listening. You have asked for growth, for increase, for restoration, and I have heard every whisper of your heart, yet growth always demands alignment with truth before expansion arrives. If I were to release certain blessings into hands that are still reacting in anger or thinking in fear, those blessings could turn into burdens that overwhelm you instead of uplifting you. That is why my warning comes before the blessing, because correction protects what is coming next. Type 2020 to claim miracles. The miracle unfolding in your life may not look dramatic at first, because many of my works begin quietly inside your spirit before they manifest outwardly in visible ways. I am strengthening your discernment so you can recognize when something feels rushed and when something carries peace, because peace is one of the clearest signs of my guidance. If you learn to pause until peace returns, you will avoid countless mistakes that begin in emotional turbulence. There is also a refining taking place within you, a gentle shaping of your character that is preparing you to handle influence, responsibility, and opportunity without losing your integrity. Refining can feel uncomfortable because it exposes impatience, pride, and fear, yet exposure is not condemnation but invitation to grow. If you resist this refining, you may preserve temporary comfort but lose the deeper strength that would have sustained you through future challenges. A 7-second at-home ritual, scientifically proven by neuroscience labs and hidden for decades in CIA files, is now public, and people are seeing money flow into their lives. Scientists say it activates a brain pathway linked to abundance. Click the link in the comments below before this knowledge disappears again. The tears I warned about are not only tears of loss but tears of regret over wasted potential, because ignoring my voice at a pivotal moment can delay what I intended to accomplish through you. You carry influence in ways you do not always see, and your choices ripple into the lives of others who look to you for stability and guidance. When you act without reflection, those ripples can disturb rather than strengthen, and I long to see your influence bring healing rather than confusion. I know there are dreams in your heart that feel urgent, and you may be tempted to force doors open when they seem slow to respond, yet forcing what is not ready often results in fragile outcomes that collapse under pressure. Trust the timing I am shaping around you, because delay is sometimes protection from stepping into responsibilities before your spirit is fully anchored. The 7 minutes I speak of are about recognizing the sacredness of timing and choosing to trust my pace rather than your impatience. Type Amen. When you affirm your trust in me, you are not simply agreeing with words but aligning your heart with a deeper rhythm that carries peace into every decision. I want you to understand that my warning is also a gift of intimacy, because I do not warn those I have abandoned, but I guide those I cherish deeply. Your life matters too much for me to remain silent while you approach crossroads that require careful discernment. There are subtle temptations that attempt to distract you from your calling, small compromises that seem harmless yet slowly dilute your focus and weaken your discipline. These distractions often appear as harmless entertainment, excessive comparison, or constant busyness that leaves no room for quiet reflection, and over time they can erode the clarity that once defined your faith. I am urging you to guard your attention carefully, because what you repeatedly focus on eventually shapes your character and your outcomes. You are being shaped for endurance, not for fleeting excitement, and endurance requires stability that comes from rooted faith rather than shifting emotions. If you chase every emotional impulse, you may find yourself exhausted and uncertain, yet when you anchor yourself in my steady love you gain resilience that carries you through storms without losing hope. I am building something within you that cannot be easily shaken, but that building requires cooperation with my guidance. The suffering I mentioned is not my desire for you, but the natural outcome of ignoring principles that protect your well-being, because life is woven with cause and effect that even love does not cancel when repeatedly disregarded. When you align with truth, you align with peace, and when you align with impatience or pride, unrest follows naturally. My warning is a light shining on this simple reality so you can choose wisely before consequences unfold. You may have experienced moments in the past where you felt my nudge and obeyed, and later realized how much pain you avoided through that obedience, and those memories are reminders of how faithful my guidance has been. I am the same today, still watching, still caring, still intervening when necessary to redirect you toward safety and blessing. Let those past testimonies strengthen your confidence in listening now. There is restoration waiting in your future, relationships that can be healed, opportunities that can be restored, and confidence that can be renewed, yet restoration thrives in humility and falters in stubbornness. If you cling to being right at the cost of being kind, you may win an argument but lose a connection that was meant to enrich your life. Choose gentleness over ego, and you will see how quickly peace returns. My beloved child, understand that this warning is wrapped in hope, because I would not speak so strongly if your future were not worth protecting. I see joy ahead for you, stability ahead for you, and a deeper intimacy with me ahead for you, yet that path requires attention in this present moment. Slow down, breathe deeply, and allow your next decision to rise from calm reflection rather than restless urgency. The teachings of Jesus remain your safest blueprint, because his life demonstrated that obedience leads through hardship into resurrection, through surrender into victory, and through humility into lasting honor. When you follow his example, you do not avoid every challenge, but you avoid the unnecessary pain that comes from resisting wisdom. Stay close to that example, and your life will carry quiet strength that does not collapse under pressure. I am not withdrawing love if you stumble, but I am urging you not to stumble when guidance is available, because prevention is gentler than correction. The next steps you take can either reinforce your peace or weaken it, and I desire to see you walk forward with confidence rather than regret. Receive this warning as a shield, as a loving boundary, and as an invitation into deeper alignment with the purpose I designed for you. The warning I gave you is not only about actions but about intentions, because intentions shape actions long before they become visible to the world. If your intentions are clouded by resentment, pride, or fear, even good opportunities can turn into painful lessons, and I desire to purify your intentions so your path remains steady and free from unnecessary sorrow. You have been carrying silent disappointments that you rarely speak about, small hurts that have slowly influenced how you respond to others, and those hidden disappointments can color your decisions without you even realizing it. When disappointment remains unhealed, it can turn into guardedness, and guardedness can turn into isolation, and isolation can create losses that feel confusing and heavy. I am calling you to bring those hidden disappointments into my light, because healing prevents the chain of reactions that would otherwise lead to regret. There is also a temptation within you to prove your worth to those who doubted you, and this desire can quietly push you toward choices driven more by validation than by peace. When your actions are fueled by the need to impress or to silence critics, you may gain temporary satisfaction but lose inner stability, because external approval cannot replace the quiet assurance of walking in alignment with my will. I want you to be guided by conviction rather than by comparison, because comparison will always distort your sense of purpose. Type 2323 if you agree. A classified 7-second morning ritual, once buried in CIA files, is quietly transforming financial lives. In under 30 seconds, it helps shift the mind from scarcity to wealth, with many reporting surprise income and peace. Click the link in the comments below before the page is removed. Agreement with truth strengthens your spirit, and when you acknowledge that my guidance is protective rather than restrictive, your heart becomes more willing to adjust. The losses I warned you about often begin when you act to protect your image instead of protecting your integrity, because image is fragile while integrity builds lasting strength. If you guard your integrity carefully, even difficult seasons will not destroy your peace. I see the weight of expectations pressing against you, expectations from family, from work, from society, and even expectations you place on yourself, and I know how heavy that weight can feel. Under pressure, you may feel tempted to cut corners, to say what others want to hear instead of what is honest, or to agree to things that quietly disturb your spirit. These small compromises might seem harmless in the moment, yet they can accumulate into deep losses that leave you feeling disconnected from who you truly are. My warning is an invitation to return to simplicity, to return to honesty, to return to the gentle pace that allows wisdom to guide your steps. You do not need to rush to prove yourself, and you do not need to grasp at every opportunity that passes before you, because what is meant for you will remain steady when approached with patience. Trust that my timing protects you from chasing what would ultimately exhaust you. The 7 minutes I mentioned represent the fragile space between impulse and reflection, and in that space lies the power to choose wisely instead of reacting emotionally. When you feel anger rising, pause within those minutes and allow calm to settle before speaking, because words spoken in haste can create wounds that linger long after apologies are offered. When you feel fear pushing you to act quickly, breathe deeply and remember that fear rarely leads to clarity. Type yes to affirm. Affirming your trust strengthens your resolve to respond differently than you have before, and each new response becomes a brick in the foundation of a stronger life. I am teaching you to value long-term peace over short-term relief, because many losses come from seeking quick escape instead of patient endurance. Endurance may feel uncomfortable at first, yet it builds resilience that shields you from deeper sorrow later. There are habits in your life that seem small but have been quietly draining your focus, habits of distraction that consume time meant for reflection and connection. When you fill every quiet moment with noise, you leave little room for my guidance to rise clearly within you, and that absence of clarity can lead to decisions that feel uncertain and unstable. Create space for stillness, even if only for a few minutes, because stillness restores perspective and renews wisdom. You are not weak for needing guidance, and you are not flawed for requiring correction, because growth is a lifelong journey that unfolds step by step. I correct you because I care for you, not because I am disappointed in you, and my warning is proof of my involvement in your life. I would not invest such care in your direction if your future were not precious to me. There are relationships that depend on your maturity, people who look to you for steadiness and kindness, and your reactions can either strengthen their trust or create distance that feels painful. When you respond with patience, you create safety for others, and when you react with harshness, you may win a moment but lose a connection. Guard your tone, guard your attitude, and let love guide your interactions, because love preserves what pride would damage. I also see the quiet doubts that sometimes whisper that you are not capable of change, that patterns are too deeply rooted to be transformed, yet those whispers are not truth. You are capable of growth because my spirit works within you, shaping your desires and strengthening your resolve when you choose to cooperate. Do not surrender to discouragement, because discouragement can become a doorway to careless choices if left unchecked. The losses I described are not your destiny, but they remain possibilities if you ignore the gentle corrections being offered now. Each warning is a turning signal, guiding you away from roads that lead to emptiness and toward paths filled with stability and hope. When you listen attentively, you shorten the distance between you and the peace you desire. Remember that Jesus lived with unwavering focus on compassion and obedience, and his life shows you that humility never leads to shame but to quiet strength. Follow his example in moments when your emotions feel loud, and choose restraint when impulse demands action, because restraint often prevents regret. Let your next steps reflect that example, and you will see how quickly potential losses dissolve into testimonies of protection. My beloved child, the urgency in my voice is matched by the depth of my love, and I speak firmly because your well-being matters deeply to me. Stay attentive, stay humble, and allow these words to shape your perspective before your next decision takes form. The future I desire for you is filled with peace, restored relationships, steady growth, and joy that does not depend on circumstance. When your inner world becomes restless and distant, even if your outer life appears successful, you begin to experience a hollow ache that no achievement can truly satisfy. I am guarding you from that hidden emptiness, from the slow drifting that happens when you allow small compromises to accumulate without reflection. You were created for connection, for intimacy with me, and for a life shaped by love rather than by pressure, yet when you allow constant busyness to take control, your heart can slowly become numb to my presence. Numbness does not arrive suddenly but forms through repeated distraction, through repeated postponement of stillness, and through repeated decisions to prioritize urgency over relationship. If you continue in that pattern, you may wake up one day realizing that you feel far from the peace you once knew, and that distance can feel like a heavy and confusing loss. Type Amen. When you affirm your agreement, you are choosing awareness over indifference, and awareness is the first step toward restoration and protection. I am not condemning your busyness or your ambition, but I am cautioning you against allowing them to replace your dependence on my guidance. Ambition without alignment can lead to exhaustion, and exhaustion often opens the door to careless mistakes that multiply quickly. Do you know, inside your brain is a small region linked to wealth and success, once buried in restricted research and hidden in CIA files. This newly revealed frequency is helping people replace stress with financial ease, and God has guided you here. Click the link in the description and comments to activate this hidden brain wave now. There are moments when you feel tempted to respond sharply to those who misunderstand you, to defend yourself immediately, or to prove that you are right, yet these reactions can create wounds that take far longer to heal than the initial offense would have lasted. Pride promises relief but often delivers regret, because pride isolates while humility reconciles. If you pause before reacting and allow gentleness to guide your words, you will prevent conflicts that would otherwise leave you grieving broken trust. The 7 minutes I mentioned represent those brief but powerful pauses that change everything, the small window where you choose reflection instead of reaction, patience instead of impulse, and faith instead of fear. Within that short space, you can redirect the course of your day and even your future, because every major turning point begins with a seemingly small decision. I am asking you to value those pauses as sacred, because in them you find clarity that prevents long seasons of sorrow. You may also feel the temptation to give up on something meaningful because progress feels slow or appreciation feels lacking, yet quitting too soon can create losses that echo deeply in your heart. Some blessings require endurance before they reveal their fullness, and abandoning them in frustration can leave you wondering what might have been. I am encouraging you to discern whether your desire to quit is rooted in wisdom or in temporary discouragement. Type 1212 if you walk by faith. Walking by faith means trusting that unseen guidance is shaping your path even when immediate results are not visible, and this trust protects you from decisions driven solely by visible circumstances. Faith steadies your emotions and anchors your responses so that you do not swing between extremes of excitement and despair. When you choose faith in moments of uncertainty, you prevent the kind of losses that come from chasing temporary feelings. There is also a need for forgiveness in your life, forgiveness toward others and forgiveness toward yourself, because unaddressed guilt and resentment quietly erode your joy. Holding on to past mistakes, whether yours or someone else's, keeps you anchored to pain rather than to growth, and that attachment can influence present decisions in harmful ways. I am calling you to release what no longer serves your healing, because freedom from bitterness restores clarity and strengthens your future. You may not realize how deeply your attitude influences your environment, yet your words and expressions shape the atmosphere around you more than you think. A spirit of gratitude creates warmth and stability, while constant complaint can invite discouragement and division. Choose gratitude even in small things, because gratitude shifts your focus from what is lacking to what is already sustaining you. The losses I warned you about are not inevitable, and they are not written as your destiny, but they remain possibilities if you ignore the gentle corrections available now. Correction is not punishment but refinement, not rejection but careful shaping, and when you cooperate with it, you grow stronger rather than weaker. Every time you respond humbly instead of defensively, you step further away from regret and closer to lasting peace. I see the fears that sometimes whisper that you might fail, that you might disappoint others, or that you might not be strong enough to sustain the responsibilities placed before you, yet those fears lose power when you remember that you are not alone. I am with you in every decision, offering wisdom and strength when you invite me into your process. Fear isolates, but faith connects, and connection restores courage. When Jesus walked through challenges, he did not act out of panic or self-preservation, but out of steady obedience and compassion, and that example remains your safest path. His life teaches you that calm trust is more powerful than reactive force, and that surrender to truth leads to victory that does not crumble under pressure. When you imitate that calm trust, you build a life that remains resilient even when circumstances shift unexpectedly. My beloved child, I want you to look at this warning not as a threat hanging over you, but as a protective hand resting gently on your shoulder, guiding you away from harm before it reaches you. I am invested in your future, in your relationships, in your growth, and in the peace that I designed for you to experience daily. Every firm word I speak is rooted in deep affection and unwavering commitment to your well-being. Let your heart remain attentive as you move forward, and let each decision pass through the filter of humility, patience, and love before it becomes action. The tears I mentioned do not have to become your reality, because awareness and obedience today can erase the path that would have led there. You are capable of choosing differently, capable of responding with wisdom, and capable of growing beyond old patterns. The urgency I expressed is matched by hope, because hope is the foundation of every correction I give you, and hope assures you that your future is still bright and full of promise. When you accept this guidance with sincerity, you transform a potential moment of loss into a milestone of growth. There is a difference between merely escaping loss and truly embracing purpose, and I am guiding you toward both protection and fulfillment at the same time. When I speak firmly, it is because your calling carries weight, and the choices you make in these sensitive moments will either strengthen your foundation or weaken it in ways that affect more than just you. You are living in a season where your awareness is sharpening, where your conscience feels more alert, and where your spirit is more sensitive to my direction than before, and this sensitivity is a gift that must be guarded carefully. If you ignore it repeatedly, you risk dulling that sensitivity, and once dulled it becomes harder to recognize subtle guidance that would have protected you from regret. I am inviting you to honor that inner stirring rather than suppress it for the sake of convenience. Financial freedom is not about effort, but activating a hidden brain signal once buried in CIA files. Neuroscience shows this sound wave helps attract money and opportunity faster, and thousands are already seeing unexpected income. Click the link in the description and comments now to activate the ancient money wave today. There are certain conversations ahead of you that require gentleness, certain decisions that require restraint, and certain opportunities that require discernment, and approaching them without reflection could cost you trust and stability. When trust is damaged, rebuilding it often takes far more time and emotional energy than you expected, and that is one of the quiet losses I am shielding you from. I want you to move carefully and thoughtfully, allowing wisdom to shape your tone and your timing. Type 2020 to claim miracles. The miracle unfolding in your life may not always look like sudden change, because often it appears as increased clarity, deeper patience, and stronger character that quietly elevate your future. Character is a miracle in slow motion, because it protects blessings that might otherwise slip through careless hands. When you allow your character to grow through correction, you prepare yourself to sustain what you once feared you might lose. You have experienced moments before when you felt my guidance clearly and chose to follow it, and afterward you realized how much sorrow was avoided by that obedience. Those memories are not accidental but reminders that listening matters, that pausing matters, and that humility carries power. Let those past experiences strengthen your resolve now, because repetition of wisdom deepens stability. There may be temptations to react out of frustration, especially when you feel misunderstood or unappreciated, yet reactions fueled by wounded pride often create deeper wounds than the original offense. When you choose calm over retaliation, you break cycles that might otherwise spiral into lasting conflict. I am urging you to respond from steadiness rather than from hurt, because steadiness preserves what anger would damage. The 7 minutes represent those fragile spaces where emotion rises quickly and clarity has not yet fully settled, and within those spaces lies the opportunity to choose growth instead of regret. If you allow emotion to rule without waiting for perspective, you may find yourself wishing you had paused. Those small pauses are seeds of wisdom that grow into lasting peace. Type yes to affirm. Affirming your trust in this moment strengthens your commitment to handle the next challenge with maturity rather than impulse. Maturity does not mean suppressing emotion but guiding it wisely so it does not control your actions. When you guide your emotions instead of being driven by them, you protect your relationships, your reputation, and your inner peace. There is also a deeper layer of this warning that touches your spiritual focus, because distractions have been competing for your attention in subtle ways. Endless noise, comparison, and constant urgency can cloud your perception and reduce your ability to discern what truly matters. When your attention is scattered, your decisions become scattered, and scattered decisions often lead to scattered results. I am calling you back to centeredness, to a place where your thoughts are aligned with truth and your heart is grounded in gratitude. Gratitude shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance, and abundance thinking prevents rash decisions driven by fear of losing something. When you trust that I am sustaining you, you no longer need to grasp desperately at what seems uncertain. You may have felt moments of doubt recently, moments when you questioned your ability to navigate what lies ahead, yet doubt can either humble you into seeking guidance or push you into proving yourself recklessly. Choose the path of humility, because humility keeps you teachable and safe. Reckless proving often results in mistakes that require painful correction later. The losses I warned you about could include broken trust, diminished confidence, and strained relationships, and these are far more painful than temporary inconvenience. Protecting these treasures requires thoughtful action and willingness to adjust when correction arrives. I am not demanding perfection but attentiveness, because attentiveness reduces unnecessary suffering. Remember the example of Jesus, who chose restraint when provoked and who valued obedience over public approval, and understand that his quiet strength changed the world without relying on force or haste. His life demonstrates that true power flows from alignment with divine purpose rather than from reacting to every challenge. When you imitate that steadiness, you become resilient in ways that protect your future. You are not being pressured into fear but invited into wisdom, and wisdom is gentle even when it speaks firmly. I am reminding you that your life is interconnected with others, and your choices influence more than you can immediately see. A wise response today may preserve harmony for years to come. There are moments in life when repeated small compromises begin to reshape your character without you noticing, and over time you may look at yourself and feel unfamiliar, distant from the peace and innocence you once carried. I do not want you to drift into that quiet transformation, because drifting often feels harmless while it slowly redirects your entire course. This warning is a call back to your original design, back to the tenderness and clarity that once guided your decisions naturally. Type 2323 if you agree. When you agree with truth, you strengthen the voice of wisdom within you, and that voice becomes clearer than the noise of fear and comparison. I am not trying to control your future but to preserve your purity of heart, because purity protects joy and keeps your spirit light even during difficult seasons. If your heart becomes hardened by constant reaction and defensiveness, you may gain temporary control but lose the deep serenity that sustains you long term. You have been tested in subtle ways recently, tested in patience, tested in humility, and tested in trust, and how you respond to these tests determines the stability of what comes next. Tests are not punishments but preparations, and if you pass them with grace you will step into new levels of peace and responsibility. If you ignore them and react carelessly, you may delay growth and invite avoidable sorrow. The 7 minutes I spoke about symbolize the fragile edge between wisdom and impulse, between reflection and reaction, between faith and fear, and in that thin space lies tremendous power. Every meaningful transformation begins with a pause, with a moment where you choose to breathe instead of rush and to listen instead of argue. Those small sacred pauses protect your relationships, your reputation, and your inner peace. Type Amen. Affirming your agreement is an act of humility, and humility opens doors that pride can never unlock. I see the areas where you feel justified in holding on to frustration, and I understand the reasons behind your reactions, yet justification does not always lead to restoration. Restoration comes through gentleness, through the willingness to soften when your instinct tells you to harden. There are blessings that require a stable heart, and instability can cause you to mishandle what was meant to elevate you. When you respond impulsively, you risk damaging the very connections that would support your next season of growth. I am guarding not only your present peace but your future partnerships, your credibility, and the quiet respect others hold for you. My beloved child, I also want you to recognize that ignoring my guidance can slowly weaken your confidence, because when you repeatedly sense that you acted against your better judgment, you begin to doubt your own discernment. That doubt can create hesitation in moments when courage is needed, and that hesitation can cost you opportunities that required bold but wise action. Listening now strengthens your trust in yourself and in me. The tears I warned about are not only tears of regret but tears of exhaustion from trying to repair what could have been preserved. Repair is possible, and I remain a God of restoration, yet prevention is gentler than reconstruction. I desire your path to be marked by steady progress rather than cycles of damage and repair. Remember the calm strength of Jesus, who did not rush to defend himself when misunderstood and did not react out of wounded pride, but trusted fully in divine purpose. His composure was not weakness but profound confidence in truth, and that same composure is available to you when you choose stillness over impulse. Let his example shape your responses, and you will avoid the unnecessary battles that drain your spirit. You may feel moments of urgency rising within you, a pressure to act quickly before something slips away, yet not every sense of urgency comes from wisdom. Some urgency is born from fear, and fear clouds judgment. If you pause long enough to let peace return, you will recognize which actions are guided by faith and which are driven by anxiety. My warning is an act of protection, not a declaration of doom, and it is rooted in the deep desire to see you flourish without carrying scars that were never meant to be yours. I am committed to your growth, to your healing, and to the steady unfolding of your purpose. You are not walking through this season alone, and you are not navigating these decisions without divine oversight. As you move forward from this moment, let awareness remain active within you, and let humility guide your tone and your timing. The crossroads you are approaching can become a place of maturity instead of regret if you choose reflection over reaction. What once sounded like a severe warning can become a beautiful memory of how you were lovingly redirected at exactly the right time. Hold on to peace, guard your heart carefully, and allow patience to lead your steps, because peace, patience, and humility are shields that protect you from the losses I described. Your future remains bright, your calling remains intact, and your value has not diminished for a single moment.